right. Welcome to today's after church tea time. We are here. I'm joined by Manuela Perez. I'm Lacey. We're unionists and we're here to talk about today's sermon, dissolving ego and becoming unoffendable. So I hope everyone's having a good day. Sorry, we had a little technicality, but we're here. So we're happy to be here with you. And yeah, we'll get right to it. I hope everybody enjoyed the sermon. I'm having my tea over here. I made some green tea. And yeah, Manny, how did you like the sermon?
The sermon was really nice and like grounding and eye-opening. I like what Adam said about like sometimes we'll like begin to like get like offended before anything even happens just because we already have like that pattern of like, oh, this is gonna happen, so I'm already gonna start getting upset about it. So that was like a good like I guess like kind of being called out on that pattern. I was like, oh yeah, that does happen to me a lot. So I choose to like release that, which was good. And yeah, also what stood out to me is like not allowing yourself to get like bullied by the ego. Because I've worked through that a lot, like just with like mental health stuff and stuff like that, like being like bullied by the ego. And I'm like, no. So I've been working on that, like not letting fearful ego thoughts like attack me and just being like, no, no, thank you. Not right.
Yeah, it's about boundaries with the ego. Like I experienced that as well, where something would happen in my day-to-day life, and then I would notice my thoughts, kind of like putting me down and bullying me and badgering me about whatever it was, if I made a mistake or if I forgot something. Um, and even if other people said something to me, I used to get very offended and very like it would send me into like a spiral where I couldn't function. I would get really upset. I I wasn't the type of person to like clap back or whatever. Like I didn't usually like fight. There's like fight, flight, or flee. I wasn't usually the fight person, but I would definitely flee and just kind of overemphasize that piece. So I'm happy because of this work that I was able to not be offended or just be able to like look at myself with objectivity and, oh, okay, there's this problem that needs resolving rather than get offended about it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true for me too. Also, what stood out to me was they mentioned like the purpose of talking about ego is not to like feed into it, but rather just like I guess like this is something like calling it out, and just being like, oh, so we can like get rid of whatever we're believing, like whatever ego thoughts, because like ego makes you think that you're separated from your good, but like it's insane because like you can never be separated from your good. So it's just like the belief in that. So yeah, that stood out to me too. Like, yeah, like you can't be like separated from whatever you think you're being separated from because it's not real. Even though it may seem real in your head or whatever's
Mhm.
going on, like the truth is that like you're always like safe and protected with God. And as you just like continue to do the mirror exercise and do the teaching as a union, like you're gonna heal like whatever it may be that is troubling you. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Exactly. Like I think what one problem, because this work does dissolve the ego, and I think one problem is that people can get offended when they have something pointed out to them, and just like what you're speaking to. Um, and that can prevent you from actually looking at the issue and healing it. And there's all sorts of like defenses. Like I was looking at myself in past Twin Flame Ascension School classes where I was like, oh, I had so many defenses up, and it's okay. Like I look at myself lovingly, but it's just interesting to notice that um that you're safe. I think when you realize that you're safe and you're loved and you're not going to get like abused or punished for whatever is pointed out, it
Mhm.
makes everything so much easier. Like I know in my own twin flame journey, it took me several years to actually acknowledge what my twin flame was showing me because I had this like feeling offended feeling within me, and I it was like a fear of getting abused if I were to reveal to myself that there was a problem, and that was all within me, even the pattern of abuse. So I had to like really heal that, and um, I think it really like comes down to unconditional love. Like when you're feeling unconditionally loved, then you feel safe, and yeah, I think that can help.
Yeah, that's all very true. And I also worked through a similar pattern with my twin flame, kind of like being like, no, this can't be me. No, and then just like absolutely like kind of like denying it in a way and be like,
Mhm.
no, no, this is impossible. Like, not my twin flame, definitely not my twin flame. Like, nope, that's not it for me. But then, but for me, that like the core of why I did that was because it was scary to feel my feelings. Like it felt kind of like a deep black hole of just being like, oh no, if I feel into this feeling, like I'm never gonna be out of this feeling and it's gonna be terrible. But when you just feel your feelings, it really does help. And it's like layers. It can be like, I guess the least resistance you have, the quicker it goes,
Yes.
whatever. Because
Yep.
yeah, because if you have resistance to like feeling your feelings, then it's just kind of just going to be like there slowly. But yeah, you can just choose to just dive into the scary feeling and release the resistance and know that like God's got you. Like you're going to be
Mhm.
okay. So that's what I've healed recently.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Very good. I know we have a couple people watching. So if you're viewing this, you want to share what you thought about today's sermon or comment or ask a question, and welcome. Glad you're here with us, whether you're watching live or in the recording. So hello to Helena Maria. Thank you for being here.
Hello.
Um, and yeah, we're happy to have you. Um, One thing I was just gonna share is I wanted to kind of share a story that kind of connects. When I was a teacher, I taught in the United States and I taught overseas. And I remember in the United States, I was like in a position where no matter what I did as a teacher, it wasn't like observed, and I started to fall into some bad habits like we were supposed to be at school at 7:30 and I would get there at like 7:35 and no one said anything, no one noticed. When I yeah, when I went to Asia, I taught in Taiwan, I was a minute late and I got like scolded. And I at first in culturally in the United States, like you're not direct about stuff. But where I was in Asia, they were very direct. They were like, "Shoo, shoo, you're a minute late. You're going to take off $2 of your pay." I was like, oh, I was offended at first. I was like, oh my, how dare they? Like, very offended. But then I thought about it and I was like, maybe it was the way they said it that was a little sharp. But I was like, that was loving because they're paying attention to me. And this was external. Like, I had to later do this within myself. Um, but I thought like it's not an attack. It's not an attack when you get called out. Um, and so that was like my first glimpse of when um, something that, a pattern that I had was being called out and brought to the surface. Um, and then I, later, like 10 years later, then I found the teachings of union, and my patterns were called out like a lot, and I was very loved. Like that is love. Like when you are with a coach or watching Twin Flame Ascension School or even working in a volunteer work group and your patterns are brought to the surface, like those are the things that are harming you that you don't want to keep around. It's pointed out to you because you are desiring to be sharpened and refined by God, and Um, I it was hard at first, but I really chose to surrender and just like what Adam and Brienne were saying, like I just really had to like heal those voices in my head that were abusing me when something was simply being pointed out of love. And then that everything got easier when I was able to just choose love there. But it took knowing that it's loving to let go of what doesn't serve you. That's loving too.
Yeah, that was a really good story. I relate to that too. Like I'm like, oh my God, I'm always like 5 minutes late, to stuff or 10 minutes late. And I'm like, I can't get rid of this habit, you know? But I'm like diligently working on it because I'm like, I can't just live my life being 5, 10 minutes late to things, you know? Like it's just not good.
Yeah.
So, like that's something I'm also like letting go and like I choose to let it go now. And also like, yeah, like discipline is very loving. Like I know my parents were very like they gave me like a lot of direction and discipline, which I see now, and I'm like, okay, I'm grateful for that. Um, but I guess I've never experienced like I guess they were just doing the best that they could, but they did a good job, you know. But
Hmm.
then also like receiving like I guess like more aligned divine discipline within the community. It did shock me. Like that was kind of I was a bit shocked the first time I was disciplined like within the community. I was like, whoa. And then it felt really bad. Like I was like, this feels bad, you know? I'm like, why are all these bad feelings coming up right now? But it was actually very loving. And yeah, I feel grateful for it. And I'm like, whoa. But then
Hmm.
yeah, like discipline is very loving. And also like disciplining yourself, which is something I'm working on too. Like for instance, like being on time versus like 5 minutes late. And then yeah, like discipline is loving and like being disciplined with like your thoughts and the ego thoughts or whatever. That's been like a thing for me too, like placing boundaries within my mind, just, and then like also like learning more about myself and like how my brain works or whatever. Being like, okay, I need to like get more support here with this because something is not aligned here, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, that's really compassionate. That's really like when you're sharing, like I hear like you've been developing a lot of like self-compassion and safety in knowing that you're safe. Um, yeah, like I think I was watching some YouTube videos about a guy uh and he signed up to do like 10 days at a Shaolin Kung Fu temple of training. And when he got there, he was like falling all over the place. And the Kung Fu master monk person was like, no, do this. No, your hand needs to go up. Your foot needs to be straight. And like just kind of grinding, grinding him. But the thing is like that is what, sharpening someone's uh like not sharpening like to make them pointy but sharpening like refining the character. That's what people go to these ashrams and Shaolin temples and kung fu and martial arts, like that's what people go to those for. And this in the teachings of union is a spiritual martial art in a sense. Like you do get sharpened. You come here. I remember the quote Jeff quoted. He said, "This is where you come for ego to die." But like, yeah. But the thing is, like, your ego, you don't want it. Like, it doesn't help you. And um, when you let go of being offended when things are pointed out to you, um, it just makes you as a person, it makes your character and your spiritual growth and ascension possible. And so I really appreciated the topic of the sermon today, and just it's perfect for what I'm going through as well. Um, I was actually like curious, like if you had a story of when you may have felt offended and then you were able to move through it to the other side and find peace. Is anything coming up?
Um, I guess recently I guess I moved through that. Well, I did with my twin flame, I guess. I was like, oh my God, I'm so offended right now. Like, I can't believe this. But I decided to just be like mature and like ask like direct questions versus like assuming. And then I was able to like move through those feelings and then like kind of see clarity. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess everything's fine. Like we are the same person. We're making the same choices right now.
Hmm.
And then as I did the mirror exercise, and I was like, I remember the next day I was upheaving a lot, so I was like super mad and angry. I was like, oh, I can't believe it, like da da da. But then I just moved through the mirror exercise. I really loved myself, and I'm like, oh wait, everything's fine. And I was able to like let that go.
Yeah.
And so that was good recently. And then maybe, I don't know, nothing else is coming up right now.
Hmm. I
Like,
had something similar happen. Like, it was in a work group I was part of, and I had shared something, and the person replied and pointed out all these inadequacies about my work, and I was like, oh, at first. But what I just went to do, like, I went straight to my paper because I think there's, I mean, I'm not enlightened, and I'm still working on my ascension, and so there's still these moments when I am invited to go back to the old pattern. But the mirror exercise like really helped me because I wrote down what I was upset about. I projected in step one about the other person. I'm upset at this person because they you know scolded me, or like were harsh with me. I think that's my upset. That's that they were harsh with me. And then I turned it around in step two, and I just looked at it on the paper. I'm upset at myself because I'm harsh with myself, and I stopped and just observed, oh, yeah, I guess I am harsh with myself. And going from step one to step two just helped me to take my power back from the upset, like to not be offended and realize like, oh, that person was just reflecting something for me to heal about myself. And I moved through step three and acknowledged it within myself, and then step four. And it it was just so peaceful. And then when I looked back, it was like a chat. When I looked back at the chat and what the person said, the feeling of feeling offended was gone. Like I was you know, like it just felt peaceful. And like, yeah, they pointed something else about me and what I did, and they're right. Like I agree with them. I need to change that thing or fix that thing or improve, or start the process of improving that thing. And it felt really good, and I felt closer with them afterward. They weren't like a jerk for having pointed it out. So that was really helpful.
yeah, I guess another story is coming up now that you mentioned
Mm.
that about being offended. I guess I've moved through that with like I guess my art and like other artists when we're critiquing each other's art. Like I remember like a few months ago I like gave permission for my art to be used and someone was like critiquing it and I read the critique and my first was like, "Oh my God, I'm so offended. Like what do you mean this and that?" I was like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? It doesn't look clear. Like, what? But then I realized, I was like, wait, no, this is just like my own upset with myself. And then I'm like, okay, that's what like artists do. They critique each other's art. They don't say like all of the amazing things about it, but they critique it so it can be better. And I'm like, okay. And I would work through that a lot, like being offended or something and be like, oh, what? And then kind of like having like that little like noise in my head and kind of being like insulted or insulting back in a way like within my mind, but then I'm like no no no, this is what happens. It's critiquing, that's what it's for. So
Hmm.
so that's what I would.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I can imagine as an artist, like when you create art, that's like purely you. Like that's you being very vulnerable with the entire world.
yeah,
And I have heard, like it's like you're like a spiritual master when you're an artist, and you can just receive the critique and
yeah,
just be like, oh yeah, thanks, and not like spiral inwards into doom and gloom
yeah, because
about it.
your feelings like if someone's
Hmm.
like, oh, I don't like this, I'm like, what? Or like but it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, it can be very sensitive and vulnerable for people. But
Yep.
kind of art critiques to make.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, and when you're creating, no matter what you're creating, you're always doing it with God. Like there's never a moment when you're not doing it with God. And not everybody is gonna like you. Like not everyone is gonna like how you do things or what you do things, and that's okay. I think like when you start to move into like really mastering the teachings of union, you start not to need other people's approval. I think that was one thing where I was almost like addicted to getting approval from other people. Oh, another thing is coming up. I think, oh man, I don't think I've ever talked about this. You know, on Facebook, when you've got the thumbs and you've got the hearts, when someone would give a thumb to my whatever I posted, I get offended. Like, why didn't they put a heart? You know, and I had to look at that because it seemed really ridiculous. Like, why am I getting so offended when someone is putting a thumb or putting a heart, you know, versus putting a heart? And I realized that I was looking for approval outside of myself, and it was still there. So I had to do a little bit more inner work on it. Um, like what I felt, and I know this is the insanity, but I'm just gonna share it. Um, Whenever someone thumbed up my stuff, I I almost took it as a snub, like, yeah, this is okay. You know, like I felt I had that belief inside of my head, but I realized like through doing the inner work that it wasn't them saying that about my stuff. It was me saying that about my own self, about myself. And so I really healed that, and I'm still going deeper there, and healing layers of that, but the main part of it got healed and seen through. So I think I don't know if anyone else experienced that, but it was helpful for me to like move through my feelings there. I mean, it really was for my benefit.
Yeah, I've experienced that too. Like the same thing basically, or like um oh, I remember one time I was like very offended by like TikTok because they shadow banned my account, and I was like, what is going on here? Because like it would like my views significantly dropped, and I was like, oh my God, like this is not good. So I had to like heal everything that came up there, and I was like, yeah, like it can like really affect you like that external validation, but like then you just heal it within. You're like, oh, it's okay, like everything's fine. But like yeah, so I've definitely moved through that too, you know. And sometimes it's funny whenever I just thumbs up someone's post, it's because I'm like, wow, that's some good stuff right there. It deserves a thumbs up, like because
Yep.
it's good stuff, you know. So yeah. Yeah, I guess what else is coming up is um yeah, I don't know, really.
Well, like what you just shared about how like when you thumb up someone's stuff and you're like really actually loving it, you
Yeah.
can see how insane ego is. Like what I was sharing was within myself. It was insane. It was like these insane thoughts that misinterpreted someone's um, purpose uh, many times, and then also was seeking that approval outside of myself. And it was really unhealthy. And I'm glad that I found the pattern and started resolving it. So, um, yeah, that sort of like is just like one example of like the many, many different ways that I feel like I've been softening and coming into my own sort of like self uh what is it called? Like self-efficacy, like being able to approve of myself there.
Yeah.
Self-approval. Yeah. And not get offended. And then okay, so there's also I wanted to talk about like what happens when someone does offend you intentionally or tries to offend you intentionally or tries to get under your skin and get a rise out of you. Like have you ever been in a situation where someone was trying to do that, and how did you respond, if you had known the teachings of union, and maybe if you didn't know the teachings of union, how did you respond?
Well, I feel like I've had two different responses. Like one of them is feeling like when someone's mean to me, I feel really bad. I'm like, oh my God, I feel so like hurt right now. Like I want to cry, you know? And then then feeling bad, like I'm like, oh, I should have said something to like defend myself to like get back at them or something like that. And I've worked through both of those responses in a way. So I guess I'm still getting clear on that as well. It's like, how do you react when someone like is being rude to you? And I'm like, I
Mm,
guess you just have to go with the flow. Like you don't want to, obviously you're not gonna like abuse them back or be mean to them back, but like you can like offer like guide like direction. Like I experienced that recently where this person was like unintentionally offending me, but it was like very like it was like inappropriate in a way. I was like, no, like you can't. And I called them out on it immediately. I was like, listen, you can't do that. Like, what are you doing? And I guess I said it in a way that maybe came off a bit harsh, but really it wasn't though, you know? Um, yeah, so I don't know. I'm also moving through that too because I haven't experienced that recently where like I'll experience like someone being mean or rude to me. Like it's very like
mm,
not it really rarely happens, but when that does happen, it does feel really bad, like if I'm being honest.
mm,
Oh my God, that hurt my feelings. Like, dang,
yeah.
you know, so I'm still working through that. Like, I don't know.
Y-
But it doesn't come up.
Yeah. Yeah. I experienced that a lot more frequently in the past, and it doesn't happen as much now. I think, because you create your reality. But when it did happen in the past, it was whether it was some angry person on my social media channels trolling my comments, or whether it was like a former roommate who was disgruntled and snapped at me or tried to criticize me for things, and it wasn't loving. Like you can feel in your heart when someone intends love versus not. And it was like I did have to I mirrored it, and I found that there was like a bully inside of me, but I also like made new choices. I made new choices to not be bullied and to respect and honor myself. And little by little, these sort of situations dissolved. But I do remember, like in the very beginning, when I experienced a lot of um, trolls, I would call them. It did kind of get under my skin. It did hurt because I was there, trying to love someone or trying to work with someone, and they were kind of abusive. Like that was what I was experiencing. And so that was something like I deeply healed. I went through the mind alignment process because those energies were within me. I was, like attracts like. And so I did a lot of healing. I think now, you can't prevent someone on your social media or whatever it is from trolling. You can put in some filters for keywords, but occasionally like one gets through. And it used to trigger me in the past, but it doesn't. I just delete it, block the person if they're really trolling. Um, if someone really wants to genuinely like have a dialogue with you, you're gonna know it. Like you're gonna know that there's an opening there for a genuine dialogue. And sometimes you just have to find out, like, is this person open? Are they unhappy and we can talk about it, or is there no opening at all? And that was something also that I had to get some discernment about through the work. Yeah.
Yeah. Something that also comes up for me is recently I experienced like someone in the city that I live and that I work with, they saw my like my Insta or my TikTok. So they were like, oh my God, what do you know about the twin flame journey? Whatever. I was like, oh, this is so cool. She's on her twin flame journey too. So we went to go like for lunch and we were just talking about twin flames. And I was asking like, oh, what do you know about twin flames? And like immediately like she believes that there's only 44,000 twin flames. And immediately I felt offended. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm dealing with this in person. You know, it's not just over social media.
Mm,
Like it was like a person in person. But then I was just like loving myself. I was like, I was trying to like explain, like, no, everyone has a twin flame, you know, but like there was like no room there for that opening in a way. So I was like, nah, whatever. Cause, you know, I did feel into like the actual energy of this person. And I was like, okay, this is
mm-hmm,
actually like a loving person. Like she understands the loving yourself part of the twin flame journey.
mm-hmm.
but just I guess the belief that there's only 144,000 twin flames or something. So I had to like love myself. I genuinely was feeling offended during that conversation. I was like, this is so offensive to me. Like I can't believe only she doesn't think everyone has a twin flame. But I was just like, I'm just gonna let it go. And I just was just loving myself. And then we were able to just have like a very genuine conversation. And I was like, yeah, this person is a loving person. She's on her twin flame journey and, working through whatever. And so am I. So, and yeah, so that was like an interesting experience that I had recently. So,
Yeah, that's the last point that I wanted to talk about is like what happens when you get offended when someone doesn't believe or think the way you do, or
yeah,
like totally pertinent for right now in the United States politics,
yeah,
right? Like there's a presidential election coming, and there's a lot of conflicting belief systems that are like kind of going head to head. And I think it's really important, and like what you did was acknowledge your feelings, but then
mhm,
also like realize that it's okay. Like you can love someone even if they don't believe what you do, even if you've got the higher vibrational piece,
yeah,
that you let go. It wasn't what you did to like let go of being offended was like you realize it wasn't about you. Like it's not personal about you. It's just that's their belief and where they are right now. And um yeah, I think that that's key is realizing it's not personal. Like it's not uh an affront to your character. It's just that that person is where they're at, and you can offer a
mm,
new way of thinking, but they're not obligated to accept. And if they don't accept, that's not that doesn't mean anything about you either. It doesn't mean you didn't do a good job. And yeah, I think it really like all of this to say, what Adam and Brian were sharing in the sermon is like it really comes as a practice of cultivating compassion and peace within yourself to to be able to not be offended when
yeah.
anything happens.
Yeah, that was a very interesting experience because I was like, wow, this is a person that believes in all those twin flame myths and they're sitting right in front of me. Wow. But it was just very because I was just thinking, I was like, what would Jeff and Shaleia like? I'm like, okay, Jeff and Shaleia are my spiritual teachers. So they teach me to just love and accept people no matter what, and not to like try to push a belief on them. So I'm like, okay, clearly it's not working. Like this person doesn't want to learn more about twin flames. They just want someone to talk to about twin flames and their twin
Hmm.
flame. So I just accepted it for where it was. And I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah,
Okay. She just wants to talk about her twin flame. So I was like, okay, that's fine.
nice,
Yeah. So that was just,
good.
and I let go of the offense. I was like, oh, I can't be friends with her anymore. She's believes this out of like misaligned thing. But then I was like, no. She also taught me something about my twin flame journey. I was like, oh, it's safe to like accept and love your twin flame no matter what. And it's just a regular relationship. So I got that really key piece there. And I was like, oh, okay, this is all aligned.
Mm,
And there was no offense. And she's actually a very loving person. And yeah, so I was like, okay, cool, fine. This is
good.
chill. So yeah,
That's unconditional love, loving her right where she's at,
yeah.
and she taught you things too. That's great.
So
Good.
so I feel complete with that story.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, we're actually nearing completion of today's after church tea time. And if you drop a comment, if you're watching this later and you comment later, someone will reply to you. But I encourage you to visit the unionism.org website to learn more about the teachings of union. If you're ready to really like cultivate your awareness, cultivate your inner self, and attract and be with your twin flame, the teachings of union are where to do it. And Twin Flames Universe embodies those teachings. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for being here with us. We love you, and we'll see you next time.